Trasmetti dal vivo. We are going. Okay, we are live.
We are live?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, I warmly welcome you to our 33rd webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. As you see, we have some technical issues. Adriano has a very interesting artistical picture put on his screen. My name is Sabina Heinz. I'm the person responsible for our webinar series and one of the vice presidents of the FRI and also responsible for our art chapter. On this 23rd of January, I'm really delighted that you have all come to join us, and I would like to introduce you our special guest, Riccardo Campa. He's professor of sociology at the Jagiellonian University of Krakow, and he will talk about the sociology of the lunar settlement. Hello, Riccardo.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I also would like to introduce our president, Bernard Foying. Hello, Bernard.
Hello, yes, so welcome everybody on this new Lunar New Year. And for the occasion, I'm taking my usual costume for celebrating the Lunar New Year, as we do with all our friends that we often mix music, astronomy, and friendship, and of course, good food and wine. And I think these are certainly a number of ingredients that we love in the moon base in the future to make a good, and I'm sure that Riccardo will mention, you know, how to build a good society, living harmoniously, sustainably on the surface of the moon. And so I'm very much looking forward to see, yes, when we are going to explore for science and then exploit the resources and then develop settlements, develop villages, cities, what type of sociology we will have, what governance, so are we going to live there together for the benefit of humankind and even for the benefits of all biosphere on Earth. So I'm really looking forward to hear you, and I wish all of you a very good, successful, prosperous, peaceful, and friendly Lunar New Year. Thank you very much, Sabina, and our dear audience from Space Renaissance International.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. We also wish you and your friends, your family, and all of you happy Lunar New Year. And I also would like to welcome Adriano Ottino. He is also one of our vice presidents and the former president and one of our founders from the Space Renaissance International. Hello, Adriano.
Thank you, Sabine. I'm sorry that my camera is not working well, so if I close it, I can talk, but you cannot see me, but I can talk, and the video will be steady. Okay, so very welcome, Riccardo, to this webinar, and we are very curious and yes, hunger to listen to your presentation, your lecture. That will be very, very interesting because we are at Space Renaissance very much interested to the human aspects of space development. Therefore, I'm sure that your lecture will be quite instructive and interesting for us. So,
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adriano. Before giving you the floor, Riccardo, I would like to introduce you to our audience. But first of all, I would mention that we have people watching from France, watching from the North Pole, Alaska, and from the Planet Reunion. Riccardo Campa, born in Manchester, is professor of sociology at the Jagiellonian University of Krakow. He possesses 2 Master of Art degrees in political science and philosophy from the University of Bologna and a PhD in sociology from the Nicolaus Copernicus University in Torun in Poland. Prior to becoming an academic, Campa was a police lieutenant with Guardia di Finanza and a journalist for La Voce di Mantova and the news magazine Il Mondo. Campa has authored and or edited many books. You can see it in our description. And he is also chief editor of the academic journal Divenire. His articles frequently appear in Monde Operaio, Italian socialist journal he founded, and is currently president of the Italian Transhumanist Association, served as director of the World Humanist Association from 2006 to 2008, and is fellow of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Riccardo, the floor is yours. We are really curious to listen to your lecture.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank you for having me here. And yes, this information that you gave are taken from Wikipedia. The Wikipedia entry is a bit old because, as you can see, the latest publication mentioned is from 2010. So I did many other things in the meantime. And actually, I will tell you something to put you in context before sharing my presentation. I've been writing a lot about space recently, and now I'm lecturing astrosociology at the Jagiellonian University. So still working in the same university. Now I lecture astrosociology and then futures analysis. Concerning publications, I don't know if you're familiar, probably you're familiar with this series that is published, is Space and Society. It's published by Springer Nature. And I've been contributing to a couple of these volumes. And today I will talk about a contribution that was published in this one. So the title, as you can see, is here, The Human Factor in the Settlement of the Moon. There are many people writing from different disciplines, so engineers or anthropologists, sociologists, and so on. And this was edited by Margaret Boone Rappaport and Konrad Schoczek. By the way, now I will share my presentation. I got some fragments from my article because, of course, the essay is quite long, so I cannot say anything I wrote there, everything I wrote there, sorry. But I selected a few fragments, and I will read these fragments and comment over it just to make it clearer, let's say. So let's see if I manage to share my screen, first of all.
Yes, in the meantime, I would like to mention that we also have people watching from Texas and California and from Poland.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Fine. So that's the title, The Sociology of Lunar Settlement. And first, I will tell you a couple of words about this discipline or sub-discipline, if you want to call it this way. I mean, astrosociology. And first of all, we should say that these sociological reflections about space missions started immediately at the very beginning of the space age. Because we can see, for instance, that I found this interesting issue of the Journal of Jet Propulsion, and was published in 1957 after Sputnik was launched in space by the Russian, the Soviet Union. Then, of course, in America, there was much less interest for what happening. They were also worried about this, so they started a discussion, and there was like two discussion panels were dedicated to space sociology in the frame of a conference organized by the American Rocket Society. And so the human factor of space exploration was discussed at the very beginning, because of course the main problem was was related to engineering. So they have to build the rockets to win gravity and so on. But of course, they saw that the Soviets were already sending in space animals and then humans, so they had also to discuss this aspect. The term sociology at that time was used in a very broad sense. So that included, as you can see, legal, physiological, psychosocial issues of space flight. Now, probably the understanding of what is sociology is a bit, it narrowed a little bit. By the way, here, of course, the key word is the human factor. And now the name and the thing, yes, of astrosociology, it is worth noticing that there's another denomination for the study of space society, which is astrosociology, which I also use in my course at the university, that gained popularity over time. So if I must mention a name here, I would say that Jim Pass was like responsible to make popular this term. He didn't coin the term, but it was the most active scholar, like in the last few years, to like develop this discipline. So what is the object of study? The sociological literature produced in the last 60 years focuses both on the sociology of space exploration and the sociology of space colonization. So these are two aspects which are, of course, related, but it is still worth distinguishing exploration and colonization. Obviously, the first type of literature largely surpasses the second one, and this is pretty obvious in the sense that exploration started long ago and is still going on, while space colonization didn't start yet, unless we consider the ISS, so the space station orbiting around our planet, already as a beginning of colonization of space. Now I will talk about some methodological issues that probably are particularly interesting for sociologists, but still could be interesting also for people that cultivate other disciplines, just to get the perspective. So this is probably the most quoted sociologist of the history of sociology, is Max Weber, and he stressed made a very important point, that we have to distinguish between existential knowledge, so that's the knowledge of what is, and the normative knowledge of what should be. Very often people mix the two discourses together, but he wanted to be clear that this should be distinguished from a logical point of view. And now, the point is that it can never be the task of empirical science to formulate binding norms and ideals. So since sociology is an empirical studies, is an empirical science that studies social facts, it should study these facts for what they are, whether we like them or not. So then if we like dream about a different world, in principle, this is not sociology. But if the sociologist's mission is put in this term, there seems to be, as I said, very little room for the sociology of space colonization, for the simple reason that it's still not there. So it's not about what it is. But we must be clear that the fact that space colonies still don't yet exist is not an obstacle that cannot be surpassed. Basically, it is true that if we take sociology as an empirical discipline, this an empirical studies, for instance, based on like interviews of setters and other empirical research techniques, that of course colonies are not there, so we don't have like this field developed yet. But we must also point out that Weber clarified, and this is a quote, so I read his quote, that the question of the appropriateness of the means for achieving a given end is undoubtedly accessible to scientific analysis. So let me put this in simple terms. Basically, think about physics and engineering. Yes, the physicists are studying the world as it is, and the engineering are using this knowledge in order to build machines or to solve practical problems. The sociologists are studying the world as it is. On the other hand, if like someone else, like politicians, for instance, decide a specific end, sociologists can still give advices, can still help to develop this project by giving practical advices. So basically, then we call this technically, with this technical word, socio-technical advice. So sociologist is a kind of like, or social engineer sometimes. And here today, I will talk about this, because this was just to justify why I'm talking something that still doesn't exist, will happen in the future. So what sociologists can say about this, how they can help. So to put it again in very simple terms, politicians will decide that, for instance, we want to build a base on the moon or on Mars or wherever you want. It's not sociologists deciding that, but once you decide, we have something, we can help, we can tell you what we should do or not do in order to get there by using our knowledge. So sociologists will draw on the knowledge accumulated in the past, even in different contexts, to venture into the possible futures. And we shouldn't forget that futures analysis or future studies is also, to some extent, or actually I would say to great extent, an offspring of sociology, because there are people like, I don't know, William Ogburn or Wendell Bell, they're all sociologists, trained sociologists, then turn into futurologists. So in the past, astrosociologists or sociologists of space, because the name was still not there, they drew knowledge from research on submarine cruises, for instance, polar expeditions, prisoner of war and survivors of disaster accounts, laboratory studies of sensory deprivation and social isolation, pilot experiences, space cabin simulator studies. Currently, when, of course, space mission started, space exploration started, they could, of course, draw knowledge from other sources. First of all, from analog missions, because before, of course, getting into a real missions, usually astronauts are trained in analog missions. And here, of course, sociologists can make their own studies, for instance, interviewing people that were isolated for a long time and see what happened there, if there were conflicts, if there was other problems inside. Then, of course, we can also draw knowledge from actual missions, because now there's a lot of material, a lot of available material. Now, let's focus on social problems in space. And now, here I got a quote from Michael Ashkenazi, that 3 decades ago he wrote this. He said, discussions of space colonizations address sociological issues, if at all, as if life in space were merely a continuation of life on Earth. And then he added, this is highly unlikely given the conditions of life off Earth. So obviously we have to see problems that are not present in our environments, terrestrial environments. We should never forget that in a space settlement, unlike on Earth, social order is a matter of life and death. And because of the amplified consequences of psychosocial stressors, governance is of no less importance than engineering system design. And here I have to say another couple of words about sociology, because there are many schools of thought, there are many different types of sociologists, and then each sociologist thinks that the real sociologist is the one he or she cultivates and so on. And there were some changes also of paradigms. Back in the past, there were sociologists like Robert Merton or Talcott Parsons that were focusing much on social functions and dysfunctions and so on. So they were focusing on order. How is it possible that so many individuals with different ideas work together and make our society work? Afterwards, in the 60s, the 70s, sociology started focusing more on conflicts and revolutions and seeing the cathartic also function of this of disorder, let's say, in the sense that society was changing. Now, these old so-called functionalist or structural approaches, they became out of fashion. But in this context, this is actually the sociology that matters, because we don't want disorder in space, at least at the beginning, let's say, and for the reason I will explain in a minute. Then, of course, life could develop in the longer period to get more similar to life we have here. But at the very beginning, it's very important that there is order, let's say. Social order is a matter of life and death. I repeat this sentence. Let's see why. So we know that there are many, like, let's say, stressful situations. Stress is strictly related to interpersonal conflict. And this is both a cause and an outcome of the latter. It says that there's a vicious cycle. More conflict, more stress, more conflict, and it keeps developing. So stress generates conflict, and the latter generates more stress. And this is a deleterious mechanism which is often observed in close human groups, such as families or companies. This is not just studied by sociologists, also psychologists has much to say about this problem. But just think about it. If there is something, if there is a problem, let's say in a pub, you can just walk out and forget about this. You may find people you don't know, they are aggressive, you just leave. But that's not possible in a family, or it's much more difficult, or in a company. You can still leave the company, but then it's not easy to find a job. So that's why in these close human groups, these problems keep developing. Sometimes they become really pathological. And now you're getting the point, yes? In a lunar base, this is a small group, and there's actually no way to get out of there. That's why it's a very serious problem. So this mechanism is of major concern in space for two main reasons. The first is possible existential threats, and the second is unusual, unknown stressors. So let's focus on existential threats first. A conflict in space may not only be detrimental to the life of some individuals, as it happens sometimes on Earth, but could be deadly for the whole settlement. That's the first problem. Of course, we have problems on Earth. Sometimes there are aggressive people. Sometimes they are even like they commit homicides or like terrible crimes, but life goes on. But in a space settlement, whether an orbital station or a lunar base or a Martian base or whatever, any individual or small group could, in prospect, undertake to destroy the entire colony by opening the habitat to surrounding space, by disrupting the power supply, or by other actions which have like few corresponding forms in Earth-based settings. And so think about, I don't know, kamikaze terrorists, suicidal terrorists. They would kill themselves, but they could even destroy the whole settlement with just a single action. Back at the beginning of a space age, so astrosociologists noticed that the presence of environmental stressors can lower the threshold of tolerance to psychological and social stressors. So here I'm connecting two types of stressors. We have like this physical or physiological stressor, and then we have like the psychological or sociological one, and they are interconnected. So we have situations that we don't experience on Earth. For instance, weightlessness, ionizing radiation, or they were mentioning atmospheric contaminants. So these unusual stressors, then they may like reverberate on psychosocial stressors, like sensory deprivation, isolation and confinement, small groups dynamics, which is more problematic than big group dynamics. I was mentioning before this problem. So life in space. So astrosociologists concluded that life in space can generate, this is the problem that we should try to prevent: anxiety, fatigue, irritability, hostility. Here I got another like quote from Canes and Fedderson. This was published in an article. This is from an article published in 1971. They said, in isolation, interpersonal conflict becomes exaggerated, and there is less chance to go outside to blow off steam or to escape from the difficulties of adjustment. I already gave you an example about this. And now here I got another study that was made by a Russian scientist. As there's no need to tell you that we have much information from the United States of America and from Russia and from China, I mean the three more active nations. So Russian scientists analyzed the communication process between space crews and outside monitoring personnel in mission control. So 2 isolated crews were studied over a period of 135 and 90 days. The presence of psychological closing and information filtration in the crews over time was observed. And now what did they find? They found out that 1 month after the beginning of the mission, the total intensity of communication dropped. So basically at the end, I can anticipate that only the commander was talking with the monitor group. The other astronauts didn't want, or cosmonauts, let's say, since we are talking about Russians, they didn't want to talk. So that was the conclusion. The communication between confined groups and outside monitoring personnel is affected by psychological closing and information filtration. These are 2 technical words. Now I put it like in clear terms. So there's a tendency, again, I try to tell this in simple words, of the crew members to become more egocentric. And this has been named autonomization, from autonomy. So is the process in which you give norms to yourself. You don't get it from outside. So the burden of communication, as I anticipated before, was increasingly left on the shoulders of a commander. And now think about it. That's not difficult to understand that, astronauts feel very special because they are very special, because they are doing something very dangerous that few people could do. And so they are out there in a very hostile environment, in difficult situations. And then you get these monitor groups telling them what they have to do all the time. And they get kind of nervous and they tend to say, I don't want to talk to them. They don't understand what's going on. So this process, of course, is also connected to specific situations. There's like long-term sleep loss. It's difficult to sleep because of, the environment. And this can lead not only to some medical problems that are being studied in a very big, like there's a big literature about these problems, like hypertension, diabetes, obesity, heart attack, stroke. But then there is a second level. So this is the medical level. Then there is the level of psychiatric disorders, such as depression, severe anxiety. And then the third level, which is, let's say, sociological, because it's related to crew cohesion. Cohesion, obviously, is a key concept of sociology. This also can be affected. So although conflict among crew members had been relatively infrequent during ISS missions, and this because, of course, people were selected well, these issues may take on more significance with longer duration missions and in more closely confined spaces. Obviously, a lunar settlement, especially at the beginning, I don't want to be too pessimistic because I'm quite optimistic, that in the long time, we can develop something good, not conflictual. But at the very beginning, these people will be isolated and confined in very small places. So we have to overcome this initial problem. So we got a situation in which we have to, that's the point, we have to plan the living place in order to minimize those problems I was mentioning before. And these problems can be physiological discomfort, boredom, claustrophobia, frustrations, psychological issues, dysfunctional conflicts, social disorder. and this demands the cooperation of diversity of professionals. The lady in the picture, for instance, said that she was already feeling claustrophobic after wearing the space suit. So even before entering, like in the capsule. And now, group cohesion and conflicts. So here got another quote from space psychologist Jesper Jorgensen, sorry. And he states clear that we need historians, sociologists, psychologists, artists, doctors, engineers, information technology specialists, and all other who can give their learned views to the mission design procedure. Obviously, these scholars, these experts coming from different fields, they have to talk to each other to understand each other, because as well as sometimes at the very beginning, there was much focus on engineering and not much on all these side problems related to, as I said, social problems. Also, sociologists or psychologists have to understand something of engineering, because they may start saying, okay, we need this space, we need to build this and to have that. But the engineers may say, we can't do that because it's too heavy. I mean, we can transport a certain amount of tons of materials, but not so much as you think. So they have to find a compromise, and they have to talk each other and to understand the different disciplines. That's the different problematics and problems of the different disciplines. This is the difficult thing to do. But still now there is this understanding that we need people from different fields to collaborate together. What is the specific contribution of sociology? In particular, sociology can be useful to assess issues such as anomie and deviance from the perspective of group dynamics and collective behavior theories. Since these issues depend on the group size, it is convenient to envision different phases of lunar colonization. So I got these two keywords, so anomie and deviance. I'll just tell you very quickly, for those that are not familiar with sociology, what we're talking about. Of course, deviance, you know, talking about crimes and so on. Anomie, it means lack of norms. So it's when there is like, usually, yes, we all experience this, and we would like to do something, but we don't do it because society is like having a pressure over us and limit our like behavior. Now, talking about group size, in this book, yes, in my essay, I mentioned 3 different phases, and I analyzed 3 different phases. The first is the base phase, when there is just a base with a very small group of people in place. Then the second phase is the village phase, and the third phase is the city phase. I will talk about these 2 phases just at the end when I will close my presentation, because the presentation is about the very first phase, the one we are approaching. So the lunar base phase. Here we got pictures about this, how it could look like, yes? Initially, there will be only a lunar base inhabited by a small number of individuals, mainly astronauts, scientists, engineers, and logistic workers. In this phase, a certain degree of anomic response is a possibility. Why it is a possibility that people would start losing contact with like social norms? Because these norms are formed, reinforced, and maintained by the larger society of which the group is a part. When people start isolating for several reasons, even on Earth, they lose contact with what is perceived as good or bad by the larger society or largest groups around them. So the lengthy isolation from this larger society context can lead to shifts in group standards and values toward those of the individual group members and of expediency. Now, in my essay, I go much into detail about this, explaining all these mechanisms. Here, I'm just touching over the surface, but then, of course, I can share the article if those that want to read more. So let's come to the recommendations. Because here sorry, I go back one slide. In my article, I give you an advice, of course, that there should be always communication. These people on the moon, they should keep communicate with their friends, not just with the monitor group. That's the point, because as I told you before, you may have like some conflict between the monitor groups and the astronauts at a point. But it's important that those people moving to the moon and being there for a long time, they still talk to their friends on Earth. Now it's easier, of course, because we are all like acquainted. We are using smartphones. We're talking to people and relating to people that we don't even meet in real life. So we are ready for this in a sense. It's important that they feel the presence of these people that are still on Earth. Recommendations. So the selection of settlers should not be based uniquely on the assessment of professional skills and mental stability. This is what we already have, of course. We need, for instance, pilots, we need like engineers, we need, and we look at their skills, I forgot to mention like, of course, the medical aspects. So they must be in good shape and things like, and healthy and so on. So we may say that these are all things that are already checked since long time. Yes. So skills, are they good pilots? Are they good engineers? Absence of medical issues, so they're healthy people. And the third one is mental stability, because already now, there are psychologists that check if these people are mentally stable and so on. I'm just saying that probably if we think in terms not just of space exploration, in which astronauts are out for a few days, sometimes even months on the ISS, but still then they could go back on Earth. We are talking about people being there for a long time. In this case, we need something more, in my opinion, at least at the beginning, in the lunar base phase. So apart from obvious needs, like planning a balanced community in terms of gender and sexual orientation, and this to minimize frustration, because sometimes we forget to think about it, yes, we have to put like people that somehow, if they have to be there for years, they have to like somehow probably also date and mate and so on. Then there are other fundamental psychological, psychosocial factors that should be taken into account. And this is my point, my personal point, that how people believe is much more relevant than what people believe or think to know. Then I will add something, because the old discussion is this: we live in a multi-religious and multi-ethnic societies. We know we have many problems on Earth, because problems like racism, problems like gender discriminations, and so on. And we don't want to take all these problems in space, especially in the first phase, when we are in a very difficult situation, when people that just have to, we need harmony, we need order, we need cooperation. So we don't want to take this problem there at the very beginning. That's at least my personal view. On the other hand, we cannot discriminate people based on their religion, based on their ethnic group, based on their gender. So it's important, in my opinion, to distinguish how people believe and what people believe. So we don't discriminate on the basis of what people believe, but how they believe. To put it in very simple terms. Then, of course, I will elaborate a little bit on this, but it's not a matter of being atheist or Christian or Muslim or whatever. The problem is that we don't want dogmatic people there, because dogmatic people are conflictual, are more ready to start a conflict. So, like a non-dogmatic atheist is welcome, a dogmatic atheist is not welcome. A dogmatic Christian is not welcome, a non-dogmatic one is welcome. That's my point of view, at least. Or a Muslim non-dogmatic is welcome, and so on. And this applies also to political views and so on. What do I mean by dogmatic, non-dogmatic? A non-dogmatic person understands perfectly the difference between believing and knowing. to believe and to know are two different things. If it's raining and I'm under the rain, I know it's raining. If I read a newspaper and I read in Hong Kong it is raining, I don't know if it's raining or not. I believe it because I believe I trust the source, or I may not believe it if I don't trust the source. Yes, now I gave a very trivial example, but of course you know that the press can write about many other things. These information are basically information of second hand or third hand, because someone was there under the rain in Hong Kong, then he told a journalist wrote, then I read it like in Europe. I'm believing if I believe. Different is knowing. Knowing is because I'm under the rain and I see it with my eyes. Now, if people understand this, they tend to be non-dogmatic because they clearly understand that when we don't know, we can only formulate hypotheses. And when we formulate hypotheses and we know that these are hypotheses, we don't get into conflict. As well, we don't get into conflict if we are both under the rain and we both see that it's raining. Yes, because we both know it's raining. Now, of course, I'm oversimplifying. It's an oversimplification, but it's just to get into to make my point. What one does not want in a fragile space community is the presence of dogmatic, fanatic, egocentric people, regardless of their worldview or substantial beliefs, regardless of this. Psychologists know well how to identify sociopaths and individuals affected by narcissistic personality disorder. So they know it. And in fact, we didn't see problems. I was mentioning this before. It's rare having conflicts in space missions because they are selected quite well. But space missions, as I said, they take like short time. Here we are suggesting that the selection should also leave out people that are not necessarily diagnosed with mental issues. Because, okay, here is just, take it as a joke. It's different from the psychological point of view and sociological point of view. I'm introducing the concept of sociological imagination now. Selfish people are not mentally ill people. Selfish people are capable of living a normal, even successful life on Earth. Actually, they are the most successful people. They are selfish. They think that they deserve everything. They want everything. So they are very aggressive in the company, in life, and so on. And they make a lot of money and they're successful. These people are not mentally ill. But these people can be dysfunctional in a small community on the moon. And to remember what Michael Ashkenazi said, actually was proposing to use like a model like a kibbutz, like those that were like developing in Israel back in the 60s and 70s to solve the problem. So selfish people could easily put at risk the stability of a fragile lunar community. So selectors should ask the potential settlers. Now I got very practical. In my opinion, they should ask such questions in their questionnaires, besides these questionnaires based on psychological knowledge. They should ask them if they were ever wrong about something in the past. Were you ever wrong? If they publicly admitted to be mistaken. When you discover you were wrong, you say, sorry, I was wrong. Which probability they attach to the possibility that in their current knowledge is to some extent unfounded. How ignorant they feel about the mysteries of the universe. If you find people that think that they were not wrong, they were always right, they never say sorry in their life. They think that they know everything and there's nothing to be discovered. Well, at this point, another bell should ring. Because failing to admit that they ever been changed their mind about something, we all change our mind. I mean, not all, of course, but wise people change mind because the world is changing around us, or that it could be still in principle wrong or ignorant about something. We are all ignorant. If someone doesn't admit he's ignorant, then he's a dogmatic person. Remember Socrates, I know that I don't know. And from this sentence, like, he was considered the wisest man in Greece because of this reason. He was conscious of his ignorance. So that, in my opinion, is something that selectors should pay attention to. And now, I finished with this presentation, but I want to say a couple of words if I still have time, because I don't know if I used all my times or not. Now I interrupt this, by the way. And I don't know if you're still there, if you can hear me, if you can see me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear and we can see you.
Okay, look, I don't know if I have a few more minutes. Do I have a few more minutes?
Yes, you can talk for a few more minutes.
Yes, it's very quickly, because here I was focusing on the base, but we need also to have a vision of the future. If they really manage to build 3 different bases, because there are 3 projects at the moment, to build 3 bases at the South Pole of the moon. One, let's call it American or Western, because of course also Europeans are collaborating with Americans. Let's say that NASA is one of the actors. The other are the Chinese, and then the Russians also said that they want to do that. When we have 3 different bases, and these 3 different bases will be very close because they are all planned to be on the southern pole of the moon. After some time, probably a village would emerge. And then my guess is that this will happen in spite of the fact that there are so many conflicts, geopolitical conflicts on our planet. And I explain you why. We know what is going on. There's a war in Ukraine, so the Russians don't talk with the Americans and things like that. We know what's going on. But in my opinion, think about it. Imagine that there are even 3 conflicting countries, like America, United States of America, and Russia and China. And we are from these 3 countries, and we are on 3 moon bases, and we are very close. Don't you think that we will start collaborating more? Because if something goes wrong, like if the energy supply doesn't work, or there is no food, or there is any other problem happening to one of these bases, the people that can help you are the Russians or the Chinese or the Americans, or whatever. Because before someone comes from Earth to help you, you are dead. So in my opinion, it's pretty obvious that those settlers, they will try to, since they are in hostile environment, they will start developing ties that are stronger than those that we have on this planet. After, of course, this settlement can develop and can get bigger, because I still hope, that we manage to terraform the moon, to create an artificial atmosphere. And when we get to this level, then we would have thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people living there. So we would have a city developing. At this phase, all these problems I was mentioning before, they would disappear, because then it would be really very similar to our way of living on this planet. So anomie, of course, you can still have problems, because it depends. If people are getting there because, of course, there are jobs, because there are, we find resources and things like that. And so people will still be selected by the companies. Then the situation will be more stable. But if people just escape from Earth because here we have a disaster, then of course anybody would go there, anybody that can afford it. And then you would have criminals, you would have mafia people, and you would have other problems. So it depends how this will happen in the future. But let's be positive. Let's think that we will just find the way to develop companies and communities And so in this case, I think that all those problems I was mentioning before would just, if not disappear, there would be even less problems than here on Earth, because people would be more selective. So this is my conclusions, as I want to be positive and like optimistic after mentioning so many problems. And now I'm here, I'm ready to talk to you, to listen to your comments and to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have many questions in the chat, and also guests from Portugal, from Norway, from Austria, from different more countries. So I'm really happy that we have so much audience. I'm trying to find the first question because there are many comments here. Chat. And also guests from Portugal, from Norway, from Austria, different more countries. So I'm really happy that we have so much audience. Do you have this echo too? I'm trying to find the first question because there are many comments here. I have here an echo, you too. And also guests from Portugal, from Norway, from Austria, Bernard, do you have something switched on, or Adriano, or no? Okay. From Guy Pinolet is a question where the three space lab, also three people are part of the space community, or part from the space community.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood the question. The question is why 3 projects separated? The reason is that because Russians, Chinese, and Americans don't talk to each other. It's simple as that. I mean, I'm observing what is going on. Yeah? There was a phase in which, like, especially the Americans and the Russians, they collaborate more than the Chinese with other groups, as far as I can see. Even now, the Tiangong, for instance, space station, the Chinese didn't want the Americans being there. But in the past, we remember, if I remember well, is when Gerald Ford was president of the United States of America, there was already the first collaboration between the Russians and the Americans. There was this rendezvous in space. And there was still collaboration on the International Space Station. So that's the question. The reason is this: as I said at the beginning, yes, sociology is about separating wishful thinking, what we would like to happen, from what is going on and what is happening. We like it or not. So we like it or not, at the moment, the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese are working separately. Probably in the future, there could be a collaboration between the Russians and the Chinese. At least we are reading about this. Yes, we don't know because we are not inside, like the places in which decisions are taken. But that's the reason. But as I can see, as I said, I think that in spite of this fact, there will be probably a collaboration, informal even, between these astronauts and cosmonauts on the moon. So I don't know if I answered your question, because I don't know if that was exactly your question. Why 3?
No, I think sorry, Sabine. I think the question was about the ambiguity between 2 words: apart, all connected without blanks, and a part with a blank in the middle. So the question by Guy Pinolet, yes, was about that. Yes. Was that community a part of the space community or apart the space community? Part or apart. Separated. It was maybe my pronunciation was not good enough. Shall I repeat the question?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe if you write it down.
There's a 3 space lab. 3 people are part of the space community or apart from the space community. Also if they have been a part of the space community or Apart.
Separated.
Separated, yeah.
I can comment on actors and apart. Okay, there's a comment by. I don't know. First of all, what do you mean by space community?
Oh, yeah, Guy Pignolet, please write again. What was your question? It was not that.
Okay, I go on with the next question. In the meanwhile, Boris Petrovich is asking, please indicate some studies with a social matrix describing interhuman relations in close environments related to space analogs or any other remote, isolated, related experiences.
Yes. Again, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I've write it for you in the chat, or can you see the chat in YouTube?
I can open the YouTube, but then there is a audio there. So that, wait a second, I got this.
Yeah, you have to block it.
Yeah.
Then you have the.
Okay, people of the Space Lab venture. Space Lab is from GUI.
Yeah, but this what I read was from Boris Petrovich.
Yes, yes.
To have indicated some studies, this very at the end.
Okay, some studies with the social metrics describing interhuman relations.
Riccardo, you got it?
Are you asking me if there are studies of that type?
Yes.
Well, there are many studies, you know. I can share with you the essay, and then of course the researcher used different techniques. There's different research techniques. There are sociologists that studied all the communications, for instance, between astronauts and monitor groups. There are different type of studies. In my essay, there is a long bibliography. So what I suggest is that I can send you the article, and then you can check the bibliography, and then you see if there is something what you're looking for. If you're asking me personally, if I use, for instance, metrics and other the quantitative, as I understand, you're talking about quantitative methods. Yes, quantitative methods. I use quantitative methods only for meta-analysis. So my approach is rather based on scenario analysis, trend analysis also, but I use quantitative methods only for meta-analysis. So it's so-called scientometrics. So for instance, I assess the number of publications on a topic, and I try to understand if there is consensus, if there is no consensus. So mine is meta-analysis.
Okay. Here's also a discussion question about the penalty. Denise Alfonso Rivero is asking, has the possibility of having penal colonies on the moon been envisaged in any academic study? Back in 1966, Robert A. Heinlein wrote in his book, "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress." He popularized the scenario. And Kendra is saying the problems are different now because threats are different now. Security in the digital realm differs in fundamental ways from security in the physical realm. And now we have digital cyber risk. And Alfonso is saying a penal colony or exile colony is a settlement used to exile prisoners by placing them in a remote location, often an island or distant colonial territory. And Ena Larsen is commenting, Kendra mentioned something important here. So, flat earther, he's confident. No, but Joshua is saying, My immediate thought is that no one would be able to justify the moon, the money to send people to the penal colony on the moon. It would be cheaper and easier to keep them on Earth. But the question is still from Denis Alfonso Ribeiro. Has there been an academic study about this colonies, this penal colonies on the moon?
Okay, thank you. Now this time
I wanted to read the comments because there was really a discussion in the chat, but this was a question.
Yes. I tried before to open the chat to see directly the discussion and the questions, but as you could hear, there was like a mess because the audio was overlapping. So now it's clear. Look, thanks a lot for this. This, let's say, more than a question, I think is like a comment, reflection. Look, Heinlein, in fact, he wrote, I would call it a masterpiece of science fiction. It's very interesting. If you notice what I said before, that in spite of the fact that on our planet, there could be conflict, geopolitical conflict between the superpowers, but on the moon, people would start collaborating anyway. It was inspired by the reading of this book you were mentioning, because if you remember, it ended the moon then started a revolution and they want independence from her because they have different problems, different situations, different situation. So I don't know, of course, everything is possible in order to make predictions about the future. I don't see, I think it's quite convincing. What I don't remember the name, the one of the participants that said that it would cost too much money. And I also think so. I don't think that the moon would be used this way. My prediction, but I can be wrong, of course, because I'm not a magician, as I can just make some speculation about the future, is that we will send, and I wrote an article about this on technological forecasting and social change, that we'll probably send to the moon and to asteroids and other celestial bodies more robots than humans, because those that will invest in these space colonies will be companies that want to make money, want to maximize the profit. We like it or not, yes, we live in a capitalistic system. So if this doesn't change, so we have to expect that there will be governments, of course, that they go there because they want to plant the flag for a matter of like prestige and so on. But there will be, and there are already companies, private companies involved, they want to make money. They will send, of course, astronauts and engineers and scientists. Scientists actually will be sent by the government, because only the government can invest in pure science. Companies will send technicians and engineers in order to extract materials, precious materials from asteroids, from the moon, if they find it. So this will actually, the colony on the moon, in my opinion, will expand only if they find something precious there to be taken away. Again, we like it or not, yes, extraction of things. And in this case, so I don't think they would just like use the moon for like to store, for instance, nuclear waste. You remember there was a science fiction movie that was used for that reason, Space 1999. Remember this probably, or as a penal like colony. In my opinion, there will be just companies, and they would like extract precious materials to be taken back on Earth, at least in this century. Yeah. And robots will be used much more than humans, because robots actually are taking the jobs of humans on this planet. So there's no reason why they should send so many humans to do jobs that machines can do. So that's my guess. Yes, but still, still, this is in the wake of so-called scenario analysis. I don't know if you're familiar with scenario analysis. Herman Kahn was the man that in Rand Corporation was like developing this method. It's just you focus on uncertainties and then you build different stories, plausible stories. You know? Of course, you can also get into this prediction to trend analysis, and there is a trend. There are more and more companies that are investing in space robotics.
Yes.
That's why I expect that this is one of the scenarios.
I put you the next question in the chat. It's still
yes, I see this. You know.
Yeah, there's still the question from Boris Pretovic, but I guess you didn't took it, so you can read this question now and maybe answer it.
So the question is about social metrics, okay? Social metrics, I mean, if I understand, you mean like using quantitative methods, right?
Yes.
So let me just, okay, here we are. I can do like this. Let me see if I manage. Oh. No, I can't do this. I was trying to paste in the chat.
But we have it, and it was a question from the chat. I took it.
No, I was trying to give like the bibliography, because he's asking the bibliography. So these articles, instead of quoting all of this, but as I said, I tried to copy this, but it doesn't really.
Put it in our chat, and Adriano can.
Yeah, we can put it in the reference. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Adriano can give it in the chat.
Yes, please do it.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay, I would like to give then the word to Bernard Foying. He would like to summarize something from the chat and.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Riccardo, for this sociology perspective. And I saw you mentioned different class size of communities that will handle. Actually, 25 years ago, the International Lunar Exploration Working Group published a roadmap for lunar exploration and utilization. So we started with a phase with a reconnaissance mission, with then a phase with a robotic village where you'll have a robot, and that's where we are now. Then a phase with various moon bases, and then going towards what we call moon village. And then the idea is that we are now in this phase building the moon village. In 10 years, we'll have a community of tens of professional astronauts. In 20 years, we'll have hundreds. We'll have 1,000. In 30 years, we'll have first babies born on the moon, and we'll have cities. So we have described all this. And I think it's important, indeed, that we involve sociology experts to guide us in the ways different communities are going to work. I would like to correct also some elements when you mentioned, okay, 3 main actors in the near term, and maybe John, a bit of interpretation of what Guy Pignolet mentioned. It's not only the classical space powers which are going to be active. And actually, that's something we developed in our vision of Moon Village. The commercial side will be even, very relevant. Maybe we dominate. So hopefully, we not impose its law, because the law of commercial can be a jungle. So hopefully we need some government to fix some rule of the road, to force us also to respect the treaty that we have signed. And in particular, there is a outer space treaty which was signed in '67 by most of the countries in the world, which, for instance, prevents militarization of space and the moon, prevents also to put weapon of mass destruction, and also prevents to have appropriation of the soil. Yes. Because if you start to give property rights and you start to have conflict, and then you cannot have harmonious development. So it's important that governments are still involved to ensure that these treaties are followed, but it could be that 80% of the funding are going to come from the community which is apart, so separate from the current space community. We expect that we will have a lot of terrestrial industry community that now don't know how to go to space, but when we are on the ground, on the moon, they can develop a lot of technologies, know-how that we use now on Earth. Like, for instance, you mentioned exploitation of resources. Now we have robotic companies that are doing mining on Earth, and this could be also at work on the moon. So clearly, new development, and in our vision of a moon village, we will take into account these commercial actors, the governmental. You mentioned scientists paid by government. Okay, I hope so, but I believe that also the industry should pay the scientists, because the scientists are also going to provide maps, knowledge, where to go, what are the environment. So let's get also companies to pay some research and development, some precursor mission. Now, on the governance, there is also in the Outer Space Treaty, there is, and as you mentioned, we will have several bases, and they should be interconnected. And that's the advantage of the moon. The moon is not like a ship, you know, like we have the International Space Station. The American didn't accept the Chinese to go in, and because they were captain on the ship, China could not go in. But the moon is a continent. It's a natural platform. And so everybody has a possibility to land on their own. And when we are on the surface, we'll have to find harmonious way to collaborate. Now, there is also in the Outer Space Treaty, for instance, an article on rescue operation. You know, now we are talking about rescuing the astronaut from ISS for the first time. Also on the moon, we will have to help each other. And also, before we build all the systems, we need to agree not only to work together, irrespective of if we have conflict on Earth, but also on the technical side. You know, we need to have the similar plugs, the similar communication system, so that you have an effective system that can be operated for the benefit of humankind, also for national benefit, possibly for commercial benefit. But I would say another important pillar is that we have to build peace. You have to show that we can build peace on the moon, and then we can expand it on Earth. We work together. We have also to build inspiration. Inspiration of the youth, gives them a purpose, gives them also a way to innovate. And I think in a sense, we have to give a purpose of renaissance on the moon. And that's what space renaissance is. We want to put all these positive ingredients, and then with your help, with the help of all the discipline, try also to engage the different part of the community, space community, also non-space, to this imperative to have some of us sent to the moon, some of us benefiting on Earth. And so that's where Space Renaissance also wants to act. Now, on the practical side, that leads to my question, we have been running also some psychology and sociology analysis in analog simulation. We have been conducted since 13 years in various classes, but for us now, we run simulation with 6 astronauts. We are going at the end of February and March to run 2 simulations in parallel from 2 bases on different continents, and we see how they interact. And so I wanted to ask you also if on this topic of looking at the sociology of different bases that would operate in parallel, if you have some idea of experiment that we could conduct for you. And then I can ask my analog astronaut to do some of these eventually quantitative studies that could benefit your research, and then in the future, the moon village.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I agree with you. And I would add one thing, that the governance is important in treaties also to prevent prevent environmental issues, because you know, this private company would probably try to maximize profits and polluting the moon and Mars, or so. And we have to avoid the situation we had in the 19th centuries and try then to solve the problem afterwards. It's important to think about it before. So we already have a much pollution in the sense that there are so many satellites and that are orbiting, that are a danger also for the planet. And so I'm a bit also worried about this situation, that the moon could become total mess because from this point of view. So it's important there's a governance and there are rules and that are binding for private and public companies and so on. So yeah.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. And then if you have some ideas of investigation we could perform on Earth,
yes,
yes, we should get in contact. Yes.
Concerning analog missions in Poland, there are a few projects. One is
actually we work with the Analog Astronaut Training Center. So they're in Respietnik, also in Krakow University, and also with Lunar. We had some campaign with them.
Yes.
And we also connect with other groups in Hawaii, and in Spain. So we are worldwide on Earth, and okay, at some stage we'll go to the moon.
Yes, I also invited in my classes an analogous astronaut involved in Lunares. His name is Luis. He's a Mexican pilot. So yeah, we are like, and there is another small analog mission in Krakow going on in the center of the city. That's interesting. By the way, yes, I'm interested in your project. Okay. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So we will see if we manage to collaborate.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to give Adriano the word. I only wanted to mention I found it very interesting that you also mentioned under the psychology aspect that you have also artists and how the groups are getting lower in the level or adjusting. And I think it is very important that you have this all in mind, and we all collectively have lived during the coronavirus pandemic. What does it mean to be isolated, to be sheltered in place? And I think it's very important that creativity is mentioned in this. So Adriano, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you, Sabine. I will try to activate my video camera, and if I will see that things go unsteady, I will switch it off again. However, okay, you can see me now. Very, very quick consideration and a question. Riccardo, you mentioned one thing that I think it's very important that I mentioned the same in my presentation, and it is the difference between exploration and settlement, or colonization, as you call it. I think the requirements will be quite different because in the first, as it was mentioned, in the exploration missions, we have selected astronauts, very attentively selected by physical and psychological characteristics and so on. But when we will go there to make business and to make industry and to work, and then of course people will be more various and even maybe not that attentively selected. But in the same time, I think that as it is written by Andy Weir in a book he wrote on, a policy novel on the moon, Artemis, where the city is very much bigger than a space station. Therefore, the more bigger the environments will be, the more the life will be normal, let's say, yes, in brackets. So we will have conflicts, we will have all the things we know we have on Earth, but it will be less dangerous for the survival of the city. I think this. So I think it would be very much interesting if in your studies, your sociological and anthropological studies, you maybe tried to make some forecast about when this shift of paradigm from exploration and science to settlement will start to occur, because I think that is a very, very important point. Because I will stop my camera now because I see that things are okay. I think that's very important, because it will be the point where people start really to make business, to make industry, to industrialize the moon and the cislunar space, and maybe living in cislunar colonies like O'Neill designed many years ago, and going down to moon to work for making a mineral extraction, mining, and processing the materials and all these kind of things that Kraft Erike well described in his papers about the moon industrialization. So yes, my question is, do you think that this shifting point between exploration and settlement will start happening before 2050 or later, or maybe just between the end of the century? And if it will be too late, how will that affect the society on Earth about our growing in a closed system that is so devastating? And it can be mitigated if we start to move outside and work and make industry outside. Okay, a little bit too complicated question, however. Just give me the answer you think possible. Thank you.
So thanks for the question. Look, as you know, it's difficult to make precise forecasts about the colonization of settlements on the moon, because as you can see, missions that were planned since a long time that keep being postponed. And I understand well why they do it, because we don't want an accident in this moment. You know, we had these disastrous accidents like the Challenger and the shuttle in the past, and this then slow down all the process. So they are very careful. They don't want to make mistakes. And I agree of being like cautious now to avoid the situation. So it's difficult to make a precise prediction, even if we read the plans of these agencies, and they keep talking about plans. Okay, there are also the plans by Elon Musk that they say, I will take 2 million people on Mars with 100 rockets and things like that. But even if you look at the plans by NASA, it's difficult to know, because they keep postponing. But in my opinion, again, I try to be optimistic. I see that there's a situation in which there are new technologies evolving in different fields, and all these technologies are converging. And that's why I think that, yes, it would be possible to have it before the half of the 21st century. I'm thinking about even technologies in the field of medicine, because I was mentioning there are several authors writing about possible problems related to the health of the settlers, because there is a different gravity. I mean, our bodies are built in millions of years of evolution that is on this planet with a certain gravity and certain conditions. The moon is as I remember, a quarter, and Mars is smaller. So these two bodies have the problem of microgravity that can have pernicious effect on our health. So people being there for years, they may get sick. So, but I think that this problem can be also overcome by new discoveries. I was reading now the book Lifespan by Sinclair, that they can regenerate the retina, they can do incredible things. So if they manage to regenerate our cells and so on, then the problem would be solved. Of course, there's also a possibility of creating artificial gravity. I mean, this is possible on orbiting stations.
Exactly.
So, yeah. In my opinion, yeah, I'm quite optimistic that there's so much, there are so many developments. Of course, I'm optimistic if we don't have something like another terrible epidemics that exterminate half of the people, or a third world war, and we start killing each other with mass weapons of mass destructions or whatever. If we don't have these exceptional like events like that can stop our progress, I will use the word progress even if it's a bit out of fashion, technical progress, then I think it's possible, it's feasible. I can see so much development in the fields of artificial intelligence, of genetic engineering, of medicine, robotics, that will make it possible. And then I agreed also about the other point you were making, that then also these social problems would just probably vanish when the community will be bigger. I'm also using the word colonization, even if it's politically incorrect, because they say, oh, again, colonization, we did it in the past. But of course, these bodies are, as far as we know, empty. So it shouldn't, in my opinion, the comparison with the colonization of other continents by Europeans in the past centuries, it doesn't hold here. You know, it's that these are empty spaces. But if someone prefers settlement, as actually I use the word settlement in my as the title of my article, it's fine.
Yes, we know colonization. We had this discussion. Colonization was very different on Earth because we had people there, and we Europeans, we were going to steal the ground and the resources of that people. But in the solar system, there's nobody. Therefore, the thing is quite different. However,
we do not know if there is life on space at all.
Yeah, the colonization word is not very much appreciated by.
Yes.
We prefer to use settlement, and we prefer to use communities instead of colonies. But okay, is thinny.
I would like to close this webinar, but I have to thank you very much, Riccardo Campa, for his interesting lecture, for the interesting discussion. And I see in the chat there are still people commenting, so maybe you would like to answer some or enter in the discussion in the chat, Riccardo. I don't know. I can offer you this because, so are all scientists and very interested. So maybe, I would like to thank you for being here with us, and would like to mention that we are a non-profit organization, that we always need help. We need support in form of donations, but also in becoming a member, of joining SRI. And of course, that you publish our webinar series. And the next webinar will be on the 6th of February. Adriano, I have closed the window now. Do you know who's our guest?
Just a moment, I will take it.
That takes too long if I open it now.
Few seconds.
This is Marlène.
Calendar.
I think this is Marlène, no? Marlène Lozier?
No. This has changed. I think we have
Jakob Mulder.
We have Jakob Mulder, and this is a very interesting topic. I'm very happy that we have him here. So stay tuned, and I wish you all a nice evening, and thank you. Dennis Alfonso Rivero writes, it was a nice webinar. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Riccardo and Bernard and Adriano, and see you on February. Okay, thank you.
And happy new lunar year. Yes.